All right, so this is your video lesson for Earth's history. So, a lot of times when we talk about our history, we talk about people's history, we talk about the United States, we use timelines. So, when we talk about Earth's history, it's not really any different. So, the geologic time scale is a timeline of the entire history of the Earth. So, this is kind of what it looks like. If we look at this top picture up here, then that is the entire history of Earth. We start back at roughly 4.5 billion years ago. So billion with a B. We work all the way up to current day. Okay. So I want you to make note of how big this chunk is right here, these 3 shades of brown. Okay. Think about that. All right. Think about that compared to these 3 right here. All right. This Precambrian time covers a lot of Earth's history. So when we talk about Precambrian time, we don't have fossils from that time. All right. And then these last 3 chunks right here where we do have fossils, if you take that and spread out a little bit, like on this bottom part, then we can see a little bit more detail. We can talk a little bit more about what we learned in Earth's history, okay? What we know about Earth's history. All right, so this right here, our oldest fossils are around 570 million years old. They work all the way up until current day. So this is where we are now. We're currently in the Cenozoic era. All right. So when we talk about the geologic time scale, we talk about it being broken down into time, just like we talk about years, months, weeks, days, minutes, seconds, all that. So it's the same kind of idea. All right. Geologic time is broken down into eons. Each eon is split into an era. Each era is broken down into periods, and each period is divided into an epoch. Some people say epoch. I honestly am not sure which one is honestly supposed to be correct. I've heard geologists say both. So, epic, epoch, they're the same thing. They're talking about the same chunk of time. They just say a little bit differently. Okay. And one of the most important things we need to talk about is the fact that the end of each era is marked by a mass extinction. Okay. So, up here, when we talk about eras, we talk about the 3 main eras in Earth's history that we talk about. Each era is marked by a mass extinction. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is that Precambrian eon or the Precambrian time. This is time before the formation of the oldest fossils that we can find here on Earth, and it covers 90% of Earth's history. So we only have fossils for about 10% of Earth's history. Now, as Earth's history continues to go on, as long as we continue to collect this information, of course, eventually we're going to have more information, kind of like, if it's getting longer, if we're recording more of it, then eventually we'll have more than 10% because it's just more. But right now, we only have fossils for about 10% of Earth's history. All right, so now, after the Precambrian time, we start with the Paleozoic era. We start with invertebrates and really simple plants. We talk about really, really simple things, so like bacteria and amoebas, stuff like that, okay? And then by the end, we get to fish that have vertebrae, then there's arachnids like spiders and insects. We've got plants that have seeds, amphibians, we have reptiles. So we've got a lot of changes that happen in this Paleozoic era, okay? And then the extinction that ends this era caused most of the marine invertebrates and amphibians to disappear. So, marine just means things that live in the ocean. So, things in the ocean that did not have backbones, and amphibians like frogs and other things that live on land and in water. That mass extinction, or those were the creatures that died in this mass extinction. All right, the next era is the Mesozoic era. This is when reptiles are dominant. So, along with the dinosaurs, we're finally getting to where the dinosaurs are. There's some small mammals and birds. So, think like mice, maybe, like mice. It wouldn't be the same kind of things we talk about today, but like cats and dogs. We talk about small mammals. We've got things like that. Okay. Near the end of this era, we finally have flowering plants, and the kinds of mammals increased, so more kinds of different creatures lived on Earth. And the mass extinction that ended this era was the one that caused the dinosaurs to go extinct. All right? And this is our current era. We have new mammals. There's some that have become extinct that we can find fossils of. We know they're not here anymore. We have new kinds of mammals. We've got diversity of life increasing, so there's more different kinds of creatures that live on Earth. Flowering plants become the most common type of plants. And finally, we get to humans in this era. So when we talk about the Cenozoic era, That is our time. This is when we first see the first humans, and we talk about, we're still in that Cenozoic era. We haven't gotten to the end of that era yet. Okay. Now, when we talk about all this information, we don't just use the geologic timescale. The geologic timescale helps us, but we use something else called a fossil record. So if you've ever been to a museum and they have a big timeline on the wall, and then they've got these little, I guess, shadow boxes, they've got artifacts and things in the timeline. That would be what a fossil record is kind of like. Okay. So it's got that timeline. It tells you what time period you're looking at, roughly how old things are, and then it gives you that artifact. It gives you that fossil to look at to connect to that time period. All right. Now, a fossil record is going to be like a piece of paper. Most of it's going to be pictures that are drawn in. Some of them are really fancy. Some of them are like displays in the museum where they have the big timeline and they've got all the fossils in there with it. But most of the time, when we talk about a fossil record, we're talking about a picture or a piece of paper or something that geologists will use as a reference. Okay. So, with a fossil record, the older fossils and rocks are buried deeper in the earth. So, when we talked about the rock cycle, we talked about how those layers form. We talked about the oldest stuff would be at the bottom. If we think about that sedimentary rock, if we think about it like it's a lasagna, if you put down one layer of noodles, then you put down cheese, you put down sauce, all that stuff, those layers are different ages. Now, granted, with a lasagna, it's not taking you very long to create each new layer, but that first layer in the bottom of the pan has been there longer than the layers on top of it. So the same thing with a fossil record. The oldest fossils and rocks, the ones that have been there longer, are going to be buried deeper in the earth. They're going to be down at the bottom of our fossil record. All right. So this is kind of what a fossil record looks like. Now, I know this looks slightly confusing. They can be different. They can all have different kinds of creatures. Some of them are color-coded. Some of them are done a little bit differently. But if we look at this one right here, Paleozoic, this is the oldest era. They give you the Precambrian time. They give you Cambrian. They give you all these different times, and they're working from the bottom up to current day. Okay? Now, this isn't current day necessarily, but they're working towards current day. They give you the Triassic and Jurassic period. They've got the dinosaurs in there in that right time chunk. So what they're doing is showing you what is older and what is younger as you move up. Okay, so they're showing you the oldest creatures, and they're showing you how it changes over time and what's newer. Okay, so it's the same thing on this side. They're showing you the oldest creatures, and these actually have lines next to them to show you how long that creature was around. So this creature was around for a really long time compared to this creature. All right, and then we get right here, we get to that megalodon. He's been around for a really long time. The dinosaurs were only here for that short period of time. So it's that same kind of idea of we're looking at the oldest creatures down here, and we're looking at how long they survived as we move up to the top. Okay? So now that we know about geologic timescale, we know what fossil records and that look like, this is not going to be the entire assignment, but I'm going to give you an assignment. You're going to create a fossil record for your life. So you're going to start with your birth and work up to current day. So start with when you were born down at the bottom and work all the way up to current day. You're going to divide your life into time chunks, just like we talked about here. These are divided into time chunks. You're going to get to name your own. I don't expect them to have any crazy names. You can name it whatever you want. And you're going to put at least 5 fossils in each time chunk that represent how you lived your life during that time. So let's say you were whatever year you were born, probably in the 2000s. That makes me feel kind of old. But whatever year you were born, if you had a special teddy bear or a blanket, or somebody gave you a special gift for your birthday, for when you were born, if you, I don't know, your first pair of shoes, something from when you were really super young, that would go in that time chunk. And if you decide to cut that time off at when you started preschool, you could put your first book bag on there. You could put pencils, colored pencils. You could put crayons, things that represent your life at that time. All right. Now, if you started playing a sport when you were in 4th grade, you can put something for that sport in that time chunk. All right. So all of those things, all of the events in your life, all the things that make you who you are, can be represented by objects. All right. Do not repeat the same fossil You can only use each object once and try and show me all the different things in your life. Don't focus just on sports or just on school or I want to see it. I want to learn about you. This is one of those really fun projects that we usually get to do crazy things with. Okay. This year's obviously going to look a little bit different, but that's okay. But this is a way to show me, I don't know, different parts of your life. Okay. So make this something creative. Make it something that gives me something that I already don't know about you. Okay. And I'll give you more details about this later. I'm just kind of introducing the idea right now. Okay. So it's going to look something like this. I'll give you a layout to start with it, but you're going to create a fossil record for your life. So you're going to tell me all these objects that represent your life at this time, just like this fossil record shows me what life on Earth looked like. Okay, so we start down here with these creatures and it changes over time, and there's different ones in each section. Okay, so it's the same idea with your own fossil record.